In Ethiopia, the connection between people and the land isn't just a nice idea, it's everything. It's survival. But what happens when that connection gets pushed past its breaking point? Today, we're diving deep into the huge environmental pressures the nation is facing, from a booming population to the very soil crumbling away. All right, let's get into it. So here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll set the stage with the basic ways people and the environment interact. Then we'll look at the main driver of change, population pressure. And from there, we'll see the direct consequences, forests that are disappearing, pollution that's spreading, and land that's breaking down. Okay, so before we can really get the situation in Ethiopia, we need to quickly cover the three basic ways any human society relates to its environment, how we depend on it, how we adapt to it, and, this is the big one, how we change it. So first up is dependence. Super simple, right? We need food, we need water, we need air to breathe. Next is adaptation. This is where we learn to live with the environment, building a certain kind of house because of the climate. But the third one, modification, that's what really drives our whole story today. This is where we start actively changing the world around us, and it's where the biggest environmental impacts really begin. And that idea of modifying the environment, well, it leads us straight to the heart of the issue in Ethiopia, the incredible pressure of a growing population on a landscape that doesn't grow with it. It's all about trying to find a sustainable balance. There's actually a term for that perfect balance. It's called optimum population. Think of it as the sweet spot, the exact right number of people an area can support for the long haul without completely wrecking the resources they need to survive. Of course, life is rarely that perfect. You can end up on one of two extremes. On one hand, you could have underpopulation, where there just aren't enough people to make the most of the resources available. And on the other, you have overpopulation, where the number of people is just too much for the land to handle. That's the challenge we're digging into here. What happens when demand outstrips the environment's ability to supply? So what happens when that pressure really starts to build? Well, the first major impact is one of the most dramatic and visible, the shocking loss of Ethiopia's forests. And the reasons for this, they're all tied directly to the most basic human needs. More people means you need more food, so you clear land for farms. They need places to live, so you build new settlements. You need fuel to cook, wood to build. Every single one of these things puts a huge demand on the forests. Now, to really grasp the scale of what's happened, you have to look back. Historical sources suggest that forests once covered a mind-boggling 40% of Ethiopia. Just take a second and picture that. Nearly half the entire country covered in forest. Now, look at where we are today. That 40% has collapsed to less than 3%. This wasn't some slow, gradual change. This was a radical transformation of an entire nation's landscape. And when you lose the trees, it's like pulling a thread that unravels everything else. Without tree roots to hold the ground together, the precious topsoil just washes away. Wildlife loses its home. Wood itself becomes incredibly scarce. It even messes with how water flows across the land. This population pressure doesn't just clear the land, it also makes what's left behind dirty. So our second big impact is pollution, which gets worse and worse as more people live closer and closer together, especially in and around the cities. And the pollution is coming from, well, pretty much everywhere. You've got household waste and sewage that can get into the water. You've got industrial pollutants, car exhaust fouling the air. And then out in the country, you have fertilizers and pesticides from farming that seep into the soil and the water. And this isn't just some abstract environmental issue. Our source material highlights the very real and, frankly, tragic human cost. For millions, burning wood or animal dung inside to cook creates toxic indoor air, and it's a massive health risk, one that's particularly deadly for small children. All of this brings us to our third and final impact, and you could argue it's the most fundamental one of all. It's the degradation of the soil itself. The very foundation that agriculture and really life itself depends on. Just look at this number. According to our source, an absolutely staggering 85% of the land in Ethiopia is now considered moderately to severely degraded. Let that sink in. That leaves only 15% of the entire country in a healthy, productive state. So what's driving this? Well, we already saw how deforestation lets soil wash away. Overgrazing by livestock does the same thing. But there's another piece to the puzzle. When firewood is scarce, people have to burn whatever they can find, including animal dung and leftover bits of crops. But that stuff is supposed to go back into the soil as natural fertilizer. When you burn it instead, you're literally starving the soil of the nutrients it needs to grow anything. And this kicks off what our source calls a vicious cycle. It's a nasty feedback loop. As the soil gets worse, crop yields drop. So, to grow enough food, people are forced to clear even more land, which, of course, just leads to more deforestation and more soil degradation. The problem literally feeds itself. So you see the chain reaction, right? Population pressure leads to deforestation. That leads to land degradation. That makes it harder for the land to support people, which just creates even more pressure. It all leads us to one final, incredibly urgent question that sums up this entire challenge. When the land can no longer provide, what happens next?